Right now, I'm playing the full version of TF2 on a Nintendo DS. You can play it with analog sticks, you can play it with your stylus, motion controls, any way you want to. From the controls to the DS home theme being TF2, to the in-game graphics looking almost like a DS game as well, you can now play TF2 at home or on the go, or even play against your friend on another DS. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. We'll also cover these DS remakes or ports for Valve games like Portal and Half-Life, even a complete reimagining of TF2 for how it could have been different on DS. Now, this isn't perfect, and we'll go over the pros and cons and workarounds afterwards, but honestly, above all, I myself have just been really enjoying watching people stripping down TF2 or modifying source games into a new fun format, like Ratlobot making source games look as good or as bad as possible, or even porting Gary's mod onto an Xbox edition disc that the Xbox can run, just for the fun of it, or learning to program code or do some basic engineering just for the enjoyment of learning a new skill. So hopefully some of you out there will just enjoy the process of trying to get TF2 onto a DS and matching the Nintendo graphics style in the TF2 world. Because this channel is trying to be about taking those things you enjoy and what you're inspired by and being proactive with them, learning from them and creating something new. I'm new to this sort of thing, so we can kind of learn it together, even though this process is fairly simple. But if you just care about the end result or how to do it or how it runs, chapters are in the description. Maybe you guys can relate to this. I've played TF2 since I was like 12, but before then I was definitely one of the Nikki kids who would be constantly on Mario Kart, Pokemon and Zelda. And for better or worse, like millions of people, that era of gaming on the Nintendo and that stylization became synonymous almost with my childhood. I say for better or worse, but realistically there were good and bad aspects. Sure, it probably hindered my socialization or prevented me from developing other skills earlier, but it also made me fall in love with that design, creativity, and a bunch of inspiration from some incredible games. And of course, I have a ton of beyond fond memories with friends that helped me make my childhood what it was. There's a very clear separation in my head going from exclusively handheld Nintendo consoles to a computer or a laptop, and I wonder what feeling merging them will make, if it will double up some of the memories, making some kind of phantom nostalgia, or just feel uncanny. Either way, I'm excited to find out. So to start off, I got this new Nintendo 2DS XL with an orange and white color scheme that seems like it could fit the aesthetics of not just TF2, but even the orange box that somewhat lines up with a similar era to the Nintendo DS. As if this whole thing could be an alternate reality TF2 DS promotional edition, similar to the Zelda or Yoshi one. Or, well, you know, if the 2DS was out at the same time as the normal DS maybe. Let's go through all these different ways to play Valve games on the DS before we go into how it's possible to play TF2 or any other Valve game fully wherever you are. So whatever you're interested in, keep your eyes on the chapters. Let's look at the TF2 reimagining first. It's the biggest change in how the game looks, of course, with the style changed from first person to a 2D side-scroller in a pixel art style. An inspired idea, especially for the time it was made in 2011. You can choose from any of the 9 classes if you're in the spawn room, using the L and R buttons to cycle through all the standard stock weapons. Updates to DS Game Maker's software has broken a lot of the game, and unfortunately, the game was abandoned mid-development, probably due to this. So not all the weapons are finished, but this proof of concept is incredible, and the people who tried it, the players who gave it a go, really seem to appreciate the work that went in. There's examples of the first part of a level, different health and weapon packs, and even functions on the touchscreen to add or remove health and ammo, even if no enemies seems to be spawning in. So you can definitely see how the game broke over engine updates, and it's unfinished by the dev, but it's really interesting to see devlogs and Kazuki's progress from a game dev perspective. And just from one screenshot you can see so much of what this world would have been like, and how this stylization of the world in 2D keeps TF2's charm, but also builds upon it, creating this really unique look and atmosphere. I couldn't actually get the game working on my actual DS, but maybe you still can if you have a flash card like an R4. If you want to just give it a go right now though, I'll link a website in the description where you can emulate it in browser on your computer. One that had way more development put into it was Aperture Science DS by Smeela and Lobo, a reimagining of Portal for the DS with not only 14 levels designed by the two, but also classic Portal 1 levels and even a level editor. Winning Neo Retro Coding Comp in 2013, So yeah, another pretty old project before the demaking scene became increasingly trendy in the last decade. In this regard, the way the visuals were handled feels so authentic. Not only are the models and textures downscaled, but the lack of anti-aliasing and the simplified colors makes it feel believable as an authentic DS engine. The thing that really pulls it together for me is the touchscreen. Having this pseudo hardware HUD, almost like turning your DS into a new piece of technology by matching the design of the actual portal gun, feels so time accurate to the UI we used to see back then, even if the game was kinda made back then. You can use the touchscreen to aim the portal gun and look around, as well as swap between portal colors, which works fairly well. You won't exactly be able to do Portal 1 speedruns, but I feel that the slower pace matches that more relaxed experience you would be looking for playing on a DS. And that's what they seem to get right the most. Just look at how fitting yet dynamic this menu is, and the way it navigates through the real 3D space when you select options. So atmospheric and reminiscent of other interactive menus, even if the actual buttons don't look the most accurate. Just those subtle accents like the posterized gradient on that touchscreen really make this feel cohesive. That's not to say there aren't things to be critical about though. For example, there's just no music in the entire game, and the movement was just very, very clanky, just with the nature of using it as stylus. My most intrusive encounter was just objects clipping through walls and then getting lost. It was hard enough to kind of turn and move using the stylus while picking something up, but it could just fall right through the map and you'd have to restart, unfortunately. And while this was extremely charming, and if I did have it on my DS things would be a bit better, after playing for a little while it just felt more like a chore than having fun. If I wanted to play Portal, which it made me want to, I'd rather just wait till I was home to play on the normal PC edition or console one. Everything felt so slow, it just almost felt like watching your parent play a game or something. I felt a little bad because I do think this is such a cool thing to exist and amazing to pull off, but the small things like having no crosshair but also having to line up shots for portals in the distance where you can't really see much going on, paired with the stop and start kind of controls, had me wishing for the experience to be over with. As cool as it was, I'm happy it exists and it's a really cool experience, but in terms of practicality, it definitely had quite a bit further to go. It's a great idea for what it is, and it shows the capability of what could have been possible on the DS with different funding. With a bit more development, this would have been really groundbreaking. I gave the level editor a go though, and I'm really impressed that this even exists. Such a huge feature for something like this. And of course it was clunky, but it's there. Again, if this had more time and budget, imagine how cool it would have been designing some levels for friends to play, or vice versa. The controls were so crazy that I didn't put a whole lot of time into making a whole level, but I did make a little slime pool for these companion cubes that we'll hang out at. If I was able to play this on the actual DS, it probably would have been a bit of a different story. Just seeing it in action was good enough for me though, and I'm glad these two little relics exist. Before the final DS Valve game and then playing TF2 multiplayer on the DS, I want to say thanks to today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN lets you hide your location online. Recently, I've been having an itch to get into Batman again, and I wanted to rewatch The Batman 2022 before watching that new Penguin series, but it isn't available on UK Netflix. But if the show or movie does appear here in this list of white text, it means that it is available on Netflix just in another region. So quickly turning on ExpressVPN and picking another region like Japan makes websites think my device is connecting from that region, so I could watch The Batman on Netflix while still being here in the UK. So it's pretty amazing. You can use a site like this one to see which films are available where, and then gain access to thousands of films and shows using ExpressVPN and changing your location. ExpressVPN is super fast without having to sacrifice any quality, so find out how you can get up to 4 extra months by scanning the QR code on the screen now, clicking the link in the description box below, or by going to expressvpn.com/Aris. Massive thank you to ExpressVPN. Without support like this, these videos would not be possible, so be sure to go and check them out. The final relic, before we work out how to play full multiplayer TF2 on the DS, is something called Half-Life Zash 3DS, a complete port of the Zash 3D FWGS for the 3DS, which can run a port of the whole version of Half-Life 1 from the original files. If you install the Zash launcher on your 3DS, you can literally drag the Half-Life files from your Steam directory onto the 3DS SD card and it will play like normal. It felt incredibly smooth and my best experience in this video so far. The aiming controls also supersede what I found to be possible with the aiming in TF2 that you'll see later, and you have full control customization from within the game. This felt so smooth and so cool with minimal restrictions, aside from slightly long loading times between levels. This is what I was hoping would be possible for Team Fortress 2, but you'll see later it is not as straightforward. This gave me the most unique and impressive feeling, not having any tethers to anything apart from the 3DS and being able to play Half-Life anywhere. If you have a 3DS, I really recommend getting this one. Aiming is never going to be easy on the DS, but you can work out the controls that work best for you and just have a great time. When you first launch, I recommend doing the Half-Life Hazard course because it introduces all the mechanics to you and you can easily optimize your controls to however you personally want them. One amazing feature that this YouTube creator found out is that without having any third-party software, you can use this game and play Half-Life 2 multiplayer on a LAN server between you and your friend with just DS's, no computers at all, which is pretty awesome. In any case, it's time for the main meat of the video, which is trying to get multiplayer TF2 working using your 3DS. First things first, let's get TF2 on here to begin with, before we customize the graphics to look more DS-like. Get the DS theme matching the TF2 aesthetic, and maybe even try a 1v1 with another device. So what we need to get this working initially is the 2DS, whatever SD card your DS uses, a way to get that SD card into your computer, and a computer with an internet connection. To add anything, let alone TF2, onto a 3DS, you need to use your SD card to get it on. In this case, we'll need a third-party software that Nintendo doesn't offer. So we need to homebrew our DS so that we can add that custom software. People homebrew their systems for various reasons, including piracy, but in this case we just need one piece of software to get TF2 working, which doesn't do anything illegal, and obviously isn't stealing from Nintendo, but if you want to do this yourself, be sure to look up the nuances of this. This part was the most tedious for sure, so feel free to skip to the next chapter if you aren't curious about the process of letting a DS even accept new files, let alone TF2. To begin, I took out my SD card from the DS. Each one has a different kind of SD card, but they all seem to work. In this case though, I bought a larger one to make sure I had enough space for everything I need. With custom SD cards though, you need to make sure they're formatted to a FAT32 format in order for your DS to read it properly. I use this free software called Disk Genius to do that pretty easily, and I'll put on screen how I did that now. I whacked it back in the DS to make sure my system was up to date, making note of the version before popping it out again and putting it in my computer. You need to have Python installed on your computer for this, which is another free program. And if you do, you can download a folder called mset9, which allows your 3DS to use custom files. You can transfer all the files inside onto your SD card. When it's on there, you can open the BAT file, then enter the number that corresponds to your device and the update that we noted earlier, and press enter. Then type 1 again and press enter to activate the first step. This makes it so that when you launch your 3DS again with the SD card in it, system settings will try to read the title of the mset9 folder you just added, but will actually read the code of it instead, which grants access to the system beyond what system settings of the 3DS normally can. So then we can add our own custom software that will let us play TF2. You can then type 1 and enter again to confirm, and the window will close. Then when we put the SD card into our DS again and turn it on, we can check if the process has worked. For some reason, the software asks you to open the Me application and then return to the home screen before opening system settings again. I then needed to let the system acknowledge that there's something wrong with the SD card by going to data management and letting system settings reset the SD card so that we can use the device to its full capabilities, completely failing to land market gardens. So to make sure this worked, I turned to the device from system settings and opened the SD card on the computer again, reactivating the BAT file. After I input my device and software information again, the BAT file told me the process worked by saying ready. So I typed 0 to close the program and went back to my 3DS with a SD card. Then I headed back to system settings, data management, 3DS and extra data, and without pressing a single button or touching the screen, I took out the SD card while the 3DS was still on and put it back into my computer. We can then put the trigger file in that will grant full control of the device onto the SD card using that same BAT file, before putting the SD card back in the DS, which will trigger the device modification. And then you need to put in like a GTA PSP cheat code to unlock it or something. In this case it was left, down, right, up, A. When that went through, the software just kind of worked its magic and I could just scroll down to save and exit before turning off the DS and yet again putting the SD card back into the PC for the final PC step, removing that trigger file by typing 4 and enter after you put in your model information through again, and then finally 5 and then enter to remove the entirety of MSET9, and my DS was ready to be Valveified. There are a couple of other extra files I added at this stage personally. One is called finalize.rmofs and it can go into the root of your SD card, and the other one is called xfinalizehelper.firm, which can go into Luma and then payloads. These are apparently just quality of life things, according to the tutorial I followed, which I'll link in the description if you do want more detail. Anyway, we're back on the DS with the SD card in, and if we put another cheat code ass rhythm game combo in, D-pad down, L and select, we can go to MISC options and click dump DSP firmware, because the DSP is basically a specialized chip that handles audio processing, which we need to keep a legal copy of so the sound works, especially with the custom files that we'll be getting. So for the finishing touch, I turned the DS off completely before I held the X button and turned it back on. This opens God Mode 9, which is the homebrew that MSET9 injected. It has a bunch of simple setup stuff that was pretty intuitive, along with some more weird button combos. And now it's done. A lot of people like to back up their old files on the computer to be safe, but that's it. We can now get TF2 working on here unrestricted. As a celebration, let's lean into the Valve TF2 DS idea and customize the home screen to get a Team Fortress 2 look and feeling for the whole console, making it more cohesive when TF2 is on there. So first thing we have to do obviously is set a theme. Nothing much we can do here except to choose red for red team or blue for blue team. But the homebrew has installed a few extra applications. For TF2 we only need a couple, but one comes with a homebrew anyway called Anemone, which can add completely custom themes to the DS. And you can even make your own completely custom ones with whatever drawings or photos you want to. The coolest part is, if we go to themeplaza.art on our desktop, we can see tons of themes other people have made already. And if we search for TF2, there are quite a few to choose from. These ones are pretty cool, but I'll go for this goldish one, which seems to stick with the orange color scheme most and has quite a clean look, as well as TF2 background music that plays when you're on the home screen. So on Anemone, I can activate the camera with the right bumper and scan the QR code directly from the site, adding the theme to my DS instantly. And right away, we have a TF2 theme on our TF2 DS. Okay, now to get TF2 working. Now, I said there's a way to play TF2 from anywhere that has an internet connection, but to get this set up, we'll need to be at a computer again, as the setup involves mirroring from your computer screen. But we won't need to be nearby the computer or connected to the same Wi-Fi after we have this set up. So to copy the game onto the DS, we can use one of the homebrew pre-installed apps called FBI to scan another QR code for a software called Moonlight. Then, on my PC, I can get another program called Sunshine.
Get it? It's shining moon.
Sunshine lets you connect to other machines on your own network, protected by a password which pairs up with Moonlight to share your screen and inputs across those devices. So I set up the security for Sunshine and put in my computer's IP address into Moonlight. My Sunshine detected the connection, and I can give the DS a name, where it officially became the TF2 DS. There are some settings on Moonlight before you start streaming though, such as resolution and controls. And don't forget that we still need to change the TF2 stylization to match the DS. But the only thing that was a concern to me in the Moonlight settings was the motion controls, which we'll get into. But on that note, what are the best controls for TF2 if we have this initial streaming method set up? Well, the Moonlight stream normally activates Steam Big Picture mode right off the cuff, which is cool enough to see on the DS. I mean, you can literally see TF2 right there already. Press escape a couple times on your keyboard and you can navigate to settings and controls to bind buttons to certain actions. Steam will be recognizing your DS inputs as a PlayStation or Xbox controller. I'd go for PlayStation controller if I were you. The first setup I tried was the standard Xbox controller, which of course meant I couldn't look around in TF2 because there was no right joystick. However, Moonlight has this touchpad option, so I could actually use the stylus to aim. I just had to increase my in-game sensitivity by 3 times, which could have actually even been higher still, honestly. Now, although the novelty of using a stylus to aim is pretty fun, it's not very practical. After all, you need to be shooting with the bumper, so it's kind of like the next evolution of a Dark Souls claw grip. But let me tell you, there is what feels like no delay while playing TF2 like this. Barely any noticeable latency, nothing that feels sluggish or jarring, and even though we're just at the start of this transformation, it was already looking pretty impressive. I still need to find suitable controls, so I had an idea to use the A, B, X, Y buttons as a D-pad to look around. This was too janky though and had massive movements, not exactly the fidelity needed to aim a crosshair on a battlefield. So I decided to make those buttons walking so that I could use the smooth analog to look around with. Now, this did technically work, and maybe if you've never held a controller in your life, you could get used to it, but this is like swapping the analogs on any normal controller, and it's the most disorienting thing ever, when your right thumb that would usually aim is moving your legs, and your left is moving your aim instead of your legs. It's like the gamer equivalent of brushing your teeth with your opposite hand, except it's actually your opposite foot. So that wasn't for me, but then I felt the warmth of a fabled TF2 hero in my heart. Solarlight TF2, one of the most well-known Demo Night players with extremely amazing charging tech, gained quite a bit of popularity online using the gyro function of the Steam Deck while playing Demo Night, and still completely going off the rails and getting a ton of crazy kills, even playing in some tournaments that way. So I found out about the motion control option in Moonlight and activated it, and made sure I was using the PS4 control option, which has motion controls, and loaded in. And wow, it worked surprisingly well. It's just not quite there. The function is usually just for a little immersion in games, not exactly fast-paced aiming while moving in combat games. So the view would get stuck at certain angles and reset a lot, making it a non-viable option for us, unfortunately. It is super cool and surprisingly responsive, still an option if you do want to try it, and is maybe better with certain classes, but just not for me at least. Then the final idea came to me. I had no fucking clue what this little nubbin was on the new 3DS. I'd never had one before, so I thought it was just a tiny dumb gimmick that was used for like 5 seconds in a Zelda game or something. After all that, it turns out it's just this weird little mutant joystick. I don't know how they get away with calling it a joystick when it's a bit of rubber that half measures the way you bend it and half the nub sensing your pressure, but it turned out to be our saving grace. As you can see here, it functions essentially like a second joystick, making it the most viable way to aim so far. It's far from perfect, and hard to get used to because of it being pressure sensitive, so that when you go for a shot sometimes, it thinks you're trying to look in another direction from your thumb moving slightly, but it's definitely something you can get used to fairly quickly. I mean, it's no contest against keyboard and mouse players, but hey, maybe you've been pub stomping for ages and want a new challenge. It did feel very novel and fun trying to get kills this way, almost like having your TF2 skills set back to 0 and having to relearn from scratch. Soldier and Pyro were definitely the easiest to aim with, which isn't a surprise. Sniper was a nightmare, as you can imagine, but I still managed to get a couple of headshots somehow, which were obviously 10 times more satisfying than normal, considering the difficulty. Demo Night was definitely the most fun though, where you can get up in people's faces and not have aiming be as much of an issue. Definitely still an issue though, and getting used to this excuse of an analog stick will take some time. Another thing to note is that there is a keyboard on the other screen, so you can use that to open your inventory, change class, etc. And remember that all buttons are custom, so you can technically tailor this exactly how you want. Overall though, this feels like it's as cohesive as it can get in terms of controls. Aside from this analog change and binding jump to ZR, the other controls are the default PS4 ones, which means I still have no idea how to crouch, and not even anyone on the Russian community server I joined could tell me either. But you've probably noticed that the game has changed a lot during that inane monologue. It went from not really fitting the DS style apart from the downscaled resolution because of the screen, to having way more of a DS-y feel. Let's go over a few more tweaks you can make to really level up this Nintendo feeling. Making TF2 look retro or stripping it to its basic settings is something quite a few people, including myself, has covered over the years, but these 2 videos are the ones I found most useful today. First up, I just turned all of the graphic settings in a normal TF2 menu to low. That did a bunch already, and you can see the harsher silhouettes of lower poly models already. To take it further, there are some console commands we can add too. Mat_viewpoint scale 0.5 reduces the internal 3D rendering resolution by 50%. The world and models are rendered at a lower resolution but then scaled to fit your screen, making the game look more blurry and pixelated. You can tailor this to whatever degree you want. Turn it to 0.2 or 0.1 if you want to see how pixelated you can make it. I settled on matte viewport scale 0.4. Matte Fong 0 disables Fong shading, which is essentially the glossy and plastic look on textures, so removing that makes everything look more flat and cartoonish. R_LOD6 forces the lowest level of detail models to be used. Level of detail, or LOD, is how much detail is on a model, mostly by changing how many polygons a model has based on how far a player or camera is from that model. Because if a model is far away and you can't see it well, it doesn't need all of that detail, and processing and rendering power can be saved if the model is swapped to something smaller. R_LOD6 makes it so all models, even close ones, render at the lowest possible available quality. Matte_PIGMIP10 is essentially the same as R_LOD6, except it changes the resolution of the textures rather than the models, so it's lower resolution, most muddy and pixelated version of those textures. And finally, Matte_FullBright1. This disables all lighting and shadows, making the whole map evenly lit. This definitely de-ages the engine here, and is probably more accurate to what TF2 on the DS would actually be like. But I'm willing to take some creative liberty here and choose not to use this command, as honestly I hate the way it looks. But what I love is the TF2 Old School pack, which replaces all character and weapon models to look like retro versions of the Mercs, further pushing that stylization and making it fit more into the Nintendo TF2 DS world. Some really charming remodels. The mod even allows you to choose if you want to remove or keep TF2 cosmetics, so that you can either keep the customization or be fully immersed in the retro stylization. You can see here though that those particles still seem pretty smooth, which stands out a bit. Luckily, there are also a couple more mods that can really help the old school pack come to life more. One fixes this rocket problem, Square Series, which converts all particles, blood, healing, sparks, flames, explosions into perfectly satisfying square versions, really pulling this whole feeling together and making the game look entirely different, yet entirely fitting. Not only are the subtle touches nice, but the more standout changes like the shapes that appear on overhealed players feel really agreeable to me. Even though these mods aren't available on Valve servers, which I normally play on, they pair so well with our console command changes that I think I'm just going to keep this mod installed even for just playing on my PC. And that's rare for me to say about mods. You can also take these visual changes further by decimating the graphics a bit more using master config, usually used for trading visual quality for FPS boosts, and Remy found a way to pixelate further using Magpie AI, which allows you to make TF2 a tiny resolution and stretch it up again. Fishtank also removed even more textures too, but honestly, I was happy with how this was looking myself. So, we've got everything working and looking the part, but how do we make this mobile and portable? The fact you have to play on the same Wi-Fi kind of defeats the point of a handheld console, while not being able to play it when you're away from home. Well, all the fun of TF2 involves online play. Most fun you can have online, apparently. So it's a given that we need to rely on the internet anyway, which is where my workaround or solution comes in. Moonlight and Sunset relies on the connection between devices being over the same network, with the DS connecting to the IP address of the local computer. But you can actually port forward your internet as long as your router supports it, which most do. Just check that it doesn't use a CNAP. Sunshine actually helps you set up port forwarding, or you can manually do it yourself. Then you can access your internet's IP address from anywhere using your phone's hotspot, and you should be able to connect to your PC like normal from anywhere on the go. Of course, latency all depends on how fast your phone carrier and Wi-Fi is, but it is possible. I spent a week and a half trying to troubleshoot other ways, but they include rooting an Android phone of a specific version or using network meshes. Port forwarding proved to be the most simple for most people, which can't be possible for everyone, and definitely do your research about security, but it's a cool proof of concept. And if adding a 3DS to the mix is too much, you can just install Moonlight on your phone and play TF2 remotely that way, in which case you don't even need to port forward and you can just use a network mesh, which are really easy to set up. Though you might be thinking, doesn't that mean I always have to leave my computer on at home when I want to play? But you actually don't. Most desktop motherboards support a feature called Wake on LAN, which lets you send a message over a network for the computer to wake up from your phone. And even if you want to have your computer fully switched off, you can even buy these remote switches that can physically press the on button of your computer when triggered. Although I guess you'd have to have no password for that and have Sunset set to open on launch. Playing against another friend on a DS behaves the exact same way it would on a computer. You can join a standard server or join a party like normal in TF2, or if you want to 1v1, you can set a launch option of Enable Fake IP for TF2 in your launch settings, and when you load into any map using your console, a friend will be able to connect to you using a fake IP that appears in the console once you are connected. But is TF2 on the DS worth it? Okay, we knew when this video started that this was less about wanting to play TF2 on the DS because it would be better, and more about if it's even possible and the fun of it. I mean, if you really want to play TF2 on a handheld, get a Steam Deck, or at least use Moonlight on a homebrewed Switch instead of a DS. Of course this was more for the fun of it. Nevertheless, the actual results were pretty amazing. Definitely surreal to be playing Team Fortress 2 on a Nintendo DS. And you can have some pretty good sessions just playing this and having fun and working through the gimmicks. I mean, you probably can get used to that right analog stick or nubbin thing pretty easily over time. Was it a truly immersive and believable experience though? I mean, although the actual stylization can be matched pretty impressively and the controls can be sort of good enough, and if we suspend our disbelief into believing this would ever have a purpose to exist in any capacity, then sure, it works. But if we know the process of it and know its modifications, it obviously doesn't feel real unless you really try and convince yourself. But who cares really? It was fun to learn to do this, even if it's not too much technical knowledge. Like I said, this channel is about acting on inspiration about things you're passionate about, such as creating video games instead of just playing them. And sometimes following up on a silly curiosity and switching up what you do for fun a little bit and indulging in something silly is a perfect step in the right direction for a new hobby. This definitely made me want to learn some more game design, programming, and even maybe some electronics. So stick around if you want to learn some new stuff too. Again, lots of inspiration from Ratlubber for this one, so check out his videos as well as the other tutorial videos I used in the description if you need that. I'll see you again next time.